I'm also on a Facebook group that is for women over 50, and they're talking about these same issues in their life, their brain fog, their weight gain, their lack of sexual interest, all those things. They kept coming up. And what also kept coming up was this HRT. And I heard about it, but I didn't really know. And when I talked to my girlfriends, they only knew a little. So when I sat down with you, not only was it easy to engage and talk to you, and I felt like you were just a person who was like having a girlfriend, but a really knowledgeable one.
I love that.
You actually could answer my questions about, tell me more about peptides, and can you explain that? And so I think if I had gone to general medicine, if I had gone that direction, and I don't think I would have gotten the same advice. I don't know, because I didn't go that direction, but I did feel like I was getting modern, cutting edge, research on what science is nowadays. Instead of waiting until I was sick and then prescribing me medication, you were really helping me find ways to get healthy again.
Welcome to the True Body Podcast. This is our first podcast ever. I have Janelle with me. She's a client of mine, and we're going to be talking about hormones and GLP-1s. Absolutely. I'm actually jacked about this because I love your story so much and your willingness to share it. And I think a lot of people will benefit. So what I want you to start with is just, how were you feeling before you came and saw me?
Well, I'm 56, and I started noticing changes about age 50. They were really subtle, but I would say the first thing was like this general malaise. I had a lack of energy, that it wasn't like tired from a long work day. I teach school, so it's common to get tired after you teach young children, but basically I was exhausted. So the idea of going to the gym, I couldn't get out of bed in the morning early enough to go, and I was hitting the snooze button. And after lunch, I was just so tired that I felt like I needed a nap. And on top of that, I was noticing some brain fog where I couldn't stay focused on a task or a list of tasks. I would start and then I would get distracted, or in just general conversation, I couldn't find the vocabulary to find the words I wanted to say. So it was really affecting everyday life. My husband always admired that I could fall asleep easily. He said it was my superpower. But what he didn't know is that around age 50, I would wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't get back to sleep. So that was unusual and something I wasn't used to. And then on top of that, I had this gradual weight gain that didn't come on like you know, a big amount at once. It was like little bits each year, where I was going up a size in pants, or then I was really struggling to get it off, and I'd lose a couple pounds, but it would just come right back on. Um, and so over these past 6 years, I started to just go up and up in my size. So at my heaviest, I would say I was 30 pounds over my what I would call a healthy weight. And that, along with just general moisture, dryness, my skin, and which affected me sexually. I had vaginal dryness, which made sex painful. And those two things, my body, and then not being able to function like I used to, that was the tipping point. And that was like, is this what normal is?
Yeah, I definitely think you're not alone. Just being a provider in this world now, like, that's just not an uncommon story. And I think when women come in and talk to me, they do think that their story is unique in those ways. And sometimes there are some unique things about what they're going through, but all of those things are just so common. We just don't talk about it. We just assume, right? We just assume it's like, this is just part of getting older, and my mom never did anything about this that I know of, so I'm not going to, and I can just buck up and do it. I'll just work out harder. I'll just set my alarm, 4 more alarms. Like, we try to improvise until we just can't anymore. And so I'm so glad that you had that tipping point. Obviously I wish you would have come sooner. And you probably do too, to some degree, but we just don't know what we don't know.
Exactly.
It sounds like you hit your tipping point, and then you came in to see me. What would you say was different about like your interaction with me versus maybe a different provider or other providers that you've seen?
Well, I would say you came recommended. So I had a couple friends because women my age talk about this if you're with your close friends. And I'm also on a Facebook group that is for women over 50, and they're talking about these same issues in their life, their brain fog, their weight gain, their lack of sexual interest, all those things, they kept coming up. And what also kept coming up was this HRT. And I heard about it, but I didn't really know. And when I'd talk to my girlfriends, they only knew a little. So when I sat down with you, not only was it easy to engage and talk to you, and I felt like you were just a person who was like having a girlfriend, but a really knowledgeable one.
I love
You
that.
actually could answer my questions about, no, tell me more about peptides and, can you explain that? And so I think if I had gone to general medicine, if I had gone that direction, and um, I don't think I would have gotten the same advice. I don't know because I didn't go that direction, but I did feel like I was getting modern, cutting edge, research on what science is nowadays. Instead of waiting until I was sick and then prescribing me medication, you were really helping me find ways to get healthy again.
I love that. Yeah, I definitely love to educate, and it might be a little much for people. But if you can't understand it and trust it, like your mind's not going to be in it either. So that's definitely big. But what were your initial thoughts when I was like going through your labs and I was telling you like what your normals and abnormals and opportunities were? Like what was your original thought? Were you overwhelmed? Were you like happy, excited that there was like a thing? What kind of were you thinking?
I live in a data-driven world like you do. We diagnose children with what they need for as readers or mathematicians, and I like that you were using data, not just your opinion, but you were looking at my actual numbers and telling me, which areas, which were all of the areas I was low in everything. I didn't know if I was done with menopause. I didn't know where I was in that realm. So to have the numbers to show exactly where I was, whether I was in menopause or through it, was helpful for me, because I wasn't a person who had hot flashes. That's one symptom I didn't get, where a lot of people know because they're still having those. But mine was just these gradual symptoms of, like I said, not being able to stay asleep, and the weight gain was really a killer to my self-confidence, because I'm a former athlete and I could always get the weight off. I could just work out harder.
Mm-hmm.
I knew how to eat nutritionally,
Yeah.
um, but it wasn't working. It was like my body was really fighting against the things I used to do to feel healthy and look healthy. So it was nice to get the numbers behind why. It sort of explained the way I was feeling, and then to hear about what my options were really encouraging.
I love that. Yeah, I feel like when back in the day when I did a lot of traditional care and women would come in with those same symptoms, I'm going to be completely honest. Like I would look at their labs, they would say, "Hey, draw my thyroid. I'm sure there's something wrong with my thyroid because I'm gaining weight and I'm so fatigued." And so I wouldn't draw all the labs necessary, right? I would draw like what I knew to draw, which was a TSH. And it would be normal. And I don't know how many women I would send out the door and say, "I don't know, it's not your thyroid. It's got to be, something. I'm sure you're not making this up, but I this is normal." And there was no tools that I would give them when they left. And that was super discouraging as a provider because I felt like I was just like toolless for them. Um, but when you get into this industry and you learn about these studies, which back in the day we called that dark medicine. That was the dark side. You shouldn't go to the dark side. You don't learn that in school. That's not ethical. There's no studies. Like you're just taught all these things that you shouldn't even look into it. And so when I personally did start looking into it and going to all of these conferences where there's hundreds of thousands of other providers also attending, which is amazing. And, everything is still study based.
I'm really curious, not to interrupt you, but I am really curious,
Yeah.
what prompted you to start looking outside of traditional medicine? Did you have colleagues that said, "Hey, this is," or were you reaching out and saying, "I can't help people. Tell me what else is there?" Or did you just do your own research? How did you get into
To be
this?
completely honest, like, I really wanted to create a space where patients just got better care. I had my own experiences where I was the patient and I wasn't treated the way, looking back on it, I should have been. I wasn't given all my options. I didn't know what I didn't know. There was a lot of assumptions. I wasn't given the time of day. And I couldn't go back to medicine the same way after that. Multiple, different instances in my own personal life, and do the same thing to somebody else. And so, unfortunately or fortunately, however you want to look at it, I had an experience that was negative, or multiple, you could say. And so that's what prompted me to do something different and switch it up. So I created True Body because I wanted to still be a provider, a wellness provider. And I wanted to not be told this is how much time you get in a room with somebody. These are the medications that you need to prescribe. You're incentivized if you prescribe XYZ, or if you make the visits more complicated. That's not ethical to me anymore. You don't think about it when you're in it. You're just like, well, this is the way I'm like feeding my family. And yeah, I'm going to make everybody complex, and I'm going to prescribe the antibiotic, and I'm going to do the things. And so you kind of get desensitized to a lot of that. And then you're thrown in as the patient in my case. And I was just like, this is just wrong. This is not right to do. And so when I opened this space up at True Body, and I was really trying to create that space, that's what prompted me down the wellness route. So it was more of the preventative things. Like, how can I improve people's gut health? How can I improve people's brain health? How can I improve people's cardiovascular health? How can I help them lose weight? How can I do all these things? And hormones were kind of like one of those things when you kind of like dive into all this stuff where you're like, oh my gosh, look at all these studies that show treating women specifically with hormones earlier in life during perimenopause will reduce their osteoporosis, or prevent it entirely, or Alzheimer's, or cancers, breast cancers, the things that we're like 100% scared of doing hormones because of, for the most part, right? To learn that that's actually preventative, that's actually going to make me at a lesser risk for developing things. So the thing is like, we're not taught those studies. We don't look into those studies. Those aren't things in school. I'd say probably got, a week of GYN in school. We don't dive into it. And definitely not in a preventative way. That's for sure. If anything, it was more of like, if you're going to prescribe estrogen, it's the lowest dose possible, and, only this route only. And then as soon as they turn, 65, discontinue it completely. And I was like, there's no reason for any of those things. There's actually no statistics that indicate that should be done. And so it really was just super eye-opening to me. And that's honestly how it all kind of like spiraled. And my team knows this, but when I start learning stuff, I get like ramped up. I get so excited. I can't sleep. I'll go to a conference and like everybody's like, well, where are we going to go out for dinner? What are we going to do? And I'm like, I'm going to type up all my notes from today and I'm going to list them all out. Like, I just get so excited about medicine, and I just want to bring that to as many people as I can and educate as many people as I can. So when I see people in office, like, I don't want to spend 15 minutes with you. I want to spend an hour, and I want to like go through each one of your labs and explain what they do and what they're about. And so you can also like empower to ask me more questions, because if you don't know what those labs are, how are you going to ask me any questions about it? If you don't know that this might cause this thing or could help this thing, and I don't tell you that, how are you going to ask me about it? And so I'm big on just like empowering people to learn things that they don't know, for one thing, but empowering them to like advocate for themselves too. And so, yeah, it's kind of a lot, honestly, but it all originated with me being placed in a position that I didn't appreciate and that I knew I was doing to a lot of other people.
I didn't I didn't actually come to because I had a bad experience. So I don't have that, comparison. In fact, I was generally healthy. And
Yeah.
with urgent care being a way to get help when you needed it, I didn't need a GP.
Yeah.
So I don't even now have a GP. You're my go-to person, but I I guess I just felt like if I have friends who are getting answers and they weren't really telling me the details, they were just saying, "Oh my gosh, Betsey's really helped me. I can sleep through the night, and my hot flashes have gone away." Things like that. I was like, "Wow, how do you make that go away?" That seems
That's a
kind of
magical thing.
yeah. It seemed like magic, or I didn't understand, but they couldn't explain it. So I don't know if you remember, but part of our conversation when I first met with you was. You said, you really should listen to this podcast. And you turned me on to a doctor who was also interviewing another doctor. And so that podcast was really eye-opening because it kind of verified or corroborated with what you were telling me, but in another way. It was like hearing it from another resource. So I also went down the rabbit hole of, oh, wow, that was really good. And what's the next podcast about? And it really your education was great in the office, but then I got to go deeper and further because you had other resources I could turn to. So that was helpful.
Yeah, everybody needs I think a couple resources, and everybody gets, learns it a different way, whether it's like me producing a study or listening to another, medical provider or whatever the case is, or articles or whatnot. But yeah, I do think that that's another thing that I'm big on when patients are like, hey, I went to my eye doctor and they told me that my GLP-1 or my this or that is going to cause this. And I'm like, was that an opinion or and turned into a fact, or was that an actual fact? Because I haven't heard that. And you should just ask them to produce that study. And sometimes, they can, and most times they can't. And so I like to be able to say, if someone has a question, here's the research, or here's a great doctor out there who can also share the same things that I'm telling you, maybe in a different way. So you're never just taking my word for it, and you're not coming into the office and just assuming like, I don't know, Betsey just might have a really high opinion of herself and she might just be making up a bunch of stuff, right? Yeah. Yeah. So no, I'm glad that you listened to that podcast. I didn't know if you did, so that's really cool. And now you're probably hooked.
Yeah, like I said, it kind of sent me down another trail, and
it's exciting when you start learning about stuff
Right.
like that, because you're like, there's answers. There's a lot of answers out there that you never knew existed. So we went through your labs and we started you on some hormones. What was your first reactions with all of that? Like, how did that, when you started everything, what were your first reactions?
I didn't keep a journal, but I'm pretty, I pay attention pretty closely to changes in my body. So I noticed that afternoon tiredness went away. I didn't have a need for a cup of coffee at 2 in the afternoon, or had that feeling of just constant yawning, where I had to get up and walk around. I'm gonna fall asleep right here in my chair. That started to really dissipate, and I felt more normal, where I could get through an entire workday without feeling exhausted. And because I was really motivated to it was like I wanted to stack the cards in my favor. I wasn't just relying on the hormones. I was still wanting to get this weight off. And so because I wasn't tired or just so lethargic, I could get to the gym. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing all the things that I was trying before, they just weren't working. I wanted to make sure I continued to eat healthy and go to the gym. And so that lack of energy went away and allowed me to then continue on that path. So that I would say that was the first thing I noticed. I think the second thing I noticed, I even sent you an email in the portal. I
Yeah.
was like, I slept through the whole night. And of course, that was gradual. It was like the first time I did it, I had to tell you it was awesome. But Um,
I
that
loved
was
that, by the way.
yeah, it was just exciting for me. It
Made
was
my
like,
heart go
okay,
good.
this isn't magic. This is something is going on in my body that's allowing me to feel more energized and then able to recover by having the right kind of rest. Because when you can't rest, you're not healing. And I don't know, I was probably full of inflammation. I was just big everywhere, and it wasn't just like I just got a belly or I just had this menopausal area of my body. It was like my arms were bigger, my legs were bigger. I was overall just pudgy, and I didn't recognize myself.
Which is huge too, right? Like the hormones are 100% gonna move the needle, but once you feel like you can sleep through the night and you have that energy, you're so much more motivated to like do the other things too. You're ready to like, all right, I can do 10,000 steps and I can go to the gym every single day and I can drink my water and I can eat my protein, and you're just like you're kind of like in it. It's so much easier to be successful when you feel like $1 million. So that's awesome. And yes, I 100% remember that. I remember getting it and it was like this really long message. And at first I was like, oh my gosh, I hope everything's okay. And like, I think it started with like, Betsey, I feel so great. And I was like, oh, I can't wait to read this.
I did.
Um,
I didn't realize how bad I felt till I started feeling better. I think it came on in such a gradual way, kind of like that, the gas tank starting to empty. But then when it's completely empty, it happens so slow that you forget how good you can feel once you're feeling normal. Because my new normal was horrible, prior to HRT, and then getting on hormone therapy, it just really made me feel more awake, more alive, and like I could thrive instead of just survive.
right. I love that. Um, okay. So you started changing your whole life, honestly.
I did. I went back
Um,
to who I would say my old self, but I really went back to my young self.
yeah,
You
yes.
know,
Yeah.
because
A great
you
way.
feel like, it's the old me, but I was the old me, and I was trying to get back to the young me.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Um, what would you say, like, it sounds like sleep was maybe the big thing. Was it energy? Like, what was the biggest thing?
Well, the things that really made me feel less of a woman, less like myself, were not being able to wear the clothes I wanted to wear. I was wearing blousy tops. I was camouflaging my body. I was doing little things like I wouldn't really want to go in a hot tub. I didn't want to put a bathing suit on. Um, like maybe a tan will make me feel thinner. And tans are so unhealthy, like maybe a spray tan. I was trying to do anything that made me feel like attractive for myself, not for the world, but just to make myself feel better about me.
Yeah.
And then I lost the identity of being an athlete when I just threw my hands in the air and said, I'm not doing anything that even resembles what an athlete would do. Daily exercise was part of my normal all through my youth into my 30s, into my 40s. And then when this happened to me, I really gave up because it was like, I'm old now.
Yeah.
And I didn't like that identity. I didn't like who I was becoming, and I was not a quitter. So it bothered me that I was giving up.
Yeah.
And I think that was the biggest issue in my life was once I overcame the lethargy, then I was able to do the things that made me feel like me again.
Yeah. That's awesome. It's huge. I feel like we go through different seasons of our life, from your 20s to your 30s to your 40s. Like every kind of chapter changes. But I definitely say for most women, like that's the hardest one because you don't have any control anymore. It's not because of babies or because of the freshman 15, or it's not because of anything. It just like continues to spiral, and there's really nothing you can do about it. And that's just a trapped feeling. So
Right. Like people will tell you, well, you're old now. This is old. This is what
this is
old
it.
age is. And yet I don't want to feel old at my mid 50s. I
Yeah.
can feel old at 80, but I don't want to feel old now.
Right.
So it was nice to get to feel like I had options, and then feel like um, that it wasn't a magic wand, that it was going to be a help.
Yeah. How did your relationship change with your spouse?
Um, I think it was it was other people in my life, really. I think my husband's very accepting of whatever size I am, and he doesn't make disparaging comments or anything. He wouldn't do that. But it was when I hadn't seen other people for a while. And in fact, a girlfriend I hadn't seen since Christmas, or maybe before that, she saw me at the grocery store and she literally was like, "What are you doing?" She could tell I just looked different. And I wasn't really sure if she was saying about my weight or if I just had a glow about me. She didn't put any words on it, but it came from a very reliable resource. And then my son, who's a PE teacher, he's very athletic, and we're a sports-oriented family. Um, I asked him to come play pickleball with my friends, the old ladies, one day. We needed a fourth player, and he showed up. And then after we got home, he's like, "Mom, you're, like, really ripped." And so when your son tells you
Oh,
that you
yeah.
look more, strong, um, that was a
That
nice
yeah,
compliment. That stuck with me. I'm like, that
that was
really hit home.
good. That
Yeah.
was
It's like,
good.
okay.
That is awesome. You're really ripped. You're like, "Yes, I am." That's awesome. That that kind of brings me to like the lifestyle which we kind of touched on, but like I guess and you kind of had some questions for me about this about what's your biggest worry right now? Like with how much you've overcome, like what's the next thing on your mind?
Yeah. I did reach out to you just recently because there is this voice in the back of my mind thinking, okay, how long is this really going to last? Like, will you have to do more or be really restrictive with, will I have to be really restrictive with my diet? Or right now, I really do work out every day. I might take, I'd say I take a Sunday off, but I love to play pickleball. So I play pickleball on Sundays, and that's probably more exercise than when I just go for the hour in the morning. But I, I guess my worry is that somehow it's just that weight's gonna creep back. Like, this is just the honeymoon phase. I feel so good right now that I wondered if I have to be really restrictive in my lifestyle to maintain this. And, I have a friend on Facebook who she's microdosing GLP-1, and so that word was like, "Oh, do you just need to take a little bit of GLP-1 once in a while to keep it?" I just didn't know if I have unfounded worries or if my worries are realistic. I know that you can't just take GLP-1 and then just hope that the weight falls off of you. I do know that it's if you wanna have lifelong change in your body and you wanna be a healthy person, you really do need to work out regularly, exercise regularly, whatever you wanna call your workout. It could just be walking, but, that you can't just say, "Well, I'm not gonna walk anymore, and I'm gonna drink everything I wanna drink and eat everything I wanna drink, and I'm just gonna rely on a GLP-1." I know that's unrealistic, but I just have those little doubts of, is not being on a GLP-1 a problem?
Hmm. Yeah, you're definitely not alone. I think there's a lot of women, men, everybody in this country, probably in the world, who've utilized the GLP ones to this point and achieved a certain weight or look and are in the exact same position you are. And so I definitely don't think like that's a worry that, you know, nobody has. Um, here's the thing. I mean, anyone is capable of gaining weight back. Whether you get gastric bypass, whether they remove your whole stomach, like whatever they do, I mean, you are always capable of gaining that weight back. So just because you're doing a GLP-1 doesn't mean you're like immune to that. That's where making sure that your baseline health is in check and in a place that you can stay consistent with is super important. And it doesn't mean restrictive. It doesn't mean like I'll never be able to eat chocolate again. I'll never be able to, go on vacation and take a week off from working out or whatever those is. It just means like what's something you can do that's sustainable and consistent. And the literature, is going to tell you all these things, but at the same point, you got to figure out what works best for you. Everybody has like different reasons why it needs to be modified, but truly, if you are walking 10,000 steps around there, averaging about that, if you are consuming as a female 100 grams of protein or more and enough calories, okay, not in a restrictive diet, but enough calories to sustain 4 to 5 workouts a week, nothing intense, but strength training, building muscle, and you're drinking water, those are all going to set you up for success. It's the people who want to take the GLP-1s and or hormones or whatever they're doing and not do anything else. They just want to lie on their couch and lose weight, and they will, but they'll lose a lot more than weight. They'll lose a lot of muscle, and a lot of times that's not recoverable. And so their health will go down. They'll actually make themselves weaker and sicker, right? They'll be less weight, but they'll be weaker and sicker in doing so. So yeah, there's definitely homework involved for the rest of your life. And with that also, when you're 37 and starting perimenopause versus 47 versus 57 and so on, you're gonna change, right? You're not gonna be the same person you were today. You will be older at some point, 10, 20 years older. And that's gonna bring different challenges. And so things will have to adapt and have to change. And so to some degree, yes, this is super maintainable and super sustainable as long as you can maintain the activity level you need, the appropriate nutrition you need, obviously staying on hormones till your last breath. A lot of people think that they get to stop them at a certain point. There's actually no studies that indicate that's helpful. In fact, it can be super detrimental for women, specifically for the brain and their heart and their bones. But really just being consistent with the natural things in your life and your nutrition will make this sustainable. So I don't think you particularly need to worry because you've already set forth a great regimen of exercise and nutrition and water and steps and all the things. You're a teacher, you're walking constantly, right? And so as long as we can keep a hold on the rest of it, the hormones, the supplements, your gut, all those different things, we should be able to maintain this. Absolutely.
Oh, that's encouraging.
Absolutely.
You did ask me a question I forgot to. I think you asked me about my labs, and there was a surprise that I wasn't aware of, and that was I had a high A1C, and that was a little bit of an explanation of not just that I was getting older, but that my hormones were low, but that I wasn't metabolizing sugar. And that was shocking to me to be a pre-diabetic because I don't have a history of that in my family. And then that prompted us to talk about GLP-1s as an option. So I didn't know that you would recommend that. I didn't know that that would be part of our conversation since I was in there about these female problems. But that was a nice, viable option. And to me, it was really, it just made weight loss simplified. I wasn't having to just rely on, um, what's the word? Like, like giving up everything. I was like, oh, I can't have sweets and it's December. It was actually the thing that just interrupted those thoughts of wanting them. And that was the most surprising to me because I'm a person who loves sweets. I grew up on dessert after not every meal, but at dessert after dinner. My mom was a baker and basically she's like the Martha Stewart. So she always wanted to have treats for guests and things like that. So it was very common for us to have a lifestyle of you ate your dinner, you cleaned your plate, you got a dessert. And to give that up was hard anytime I was trying to diet. And I didn't have the GLP-1 really, they talk about food noise, which is kind of a weird word, a weird phrase to me. I didn't understand what food noise was, but I guess that's what it is when you have a craving and you're just having to, try to keep yourself occupied. Or I'd go to bed. I'd be like, I guess I'll just go to bed because I can't stop thinking about I want a nighttime snack. And that wasn't even it didn't even pop into my mind to have a cup of tea and some graham crackers before bed, which is sort of like how I would treat myself. have some carbs
Yeah.
before I go to sleep.
Yeah.
But the GLP-1 was the thing that I think really helped me not have to even think about food, but I could just have a healthy diet and not be worried about my cravings, my drop in blood sugar. Um, and even when I went during the holidays, I'd go to someone else's house. That was always hard because if I didn't have it in the house, I wouldn't eat it. But if I went to someone else's house, then there's a spread of sweets and all kinds of goodies. I really didn't indulge over the holidays, and that's completely out of character for me. So I loved that took that away and allowed me to just stay focused on my goals. But it was very short-lived. I lost the 25 pounds I needed to lose between September and January, and that's when the GLP was done. I was done taking my recommended dose, and I didn't get more. And so far, so good. I have maintained it. And that was just like why I had that lingering question of, will I start having those cravings again? Will I start being the person who needs dessert every night? And will it just gradually come back and I'll go back to my old, I wouldn't call them habits, but willpower was the word I was trying to come up with. I didn't have to just rely on willpower
Yeah.
to say, well, I can't have that anymore.
Yeah, I think they can be, I mean, what a revolutionary drug, right? For so many people who don't even know what food noise is, but are just kind of crippled by it on a regular basis. So I think, yeah, you explaining that's like perfect. Like people don't even know they're having those cravings until they don't. And then they're like, oh my gosh, I'm not thinking about this anymore. And I didn't ever know that that could be a place that I could be,
Right.
mentally.
It almost felt like it changed the way I thought about food, which
Mhm.
it's not a mental drug, right? I mean, like, it was really changing the way I considered sweets. It just I wasn't turned off by them. I just didn't have a desire I wasn't drawn toward the donuts. I didn't want a piece of cake and then another piece of cake because it tasted so good. So, yeah, it was just weird how it affected my opinion of food.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I would say like everybody experiences something similar to that for sure. But everybody always has like their other like little quirks. Like, some people are like, I don't even want alcohol anymore. I had a gal who was like, I don't like to online shop. And she was like, and I'm an online shopper. You know what I mean? So it was like cravings of all kinds, right? And so it is a super fascinating drug, and I'm always shocked about what patients will come back and say to me. But it's always for the better, right? It's always for the better. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely no telling as far as like those types of things and will those cravings return. And I'm sure there's a possibility, but as long as you're like sticking on the right path and you feel so good, sometimes that's a super big deterrent too. Like how you would feel after you ate a bunch of garbage or weren't eating, healthy. But kind of going back to that original question on like the micro dosing, that is what some people do. It is beneficial for them. And there's, some good data on microdosing and there's some data on microdosing. And I think it really boils down to the person. I think one of the biggest reasons is not necessarily the cravings and things like that, but it's the inflammation. So it really targets that inflammatory cascade within the body. And so patients are like, I'm not going to be on this for the cravings or the food or any of that. My joints feel so good when I take a small dose of this. Or my gut feels so good. For my PCOS patients, it's their PCOS is under control for that insulin resistance and those side effects and things that they have. So it's not like there's a one size fits all of like why one person might microdose versus another. My goal is to get people off of the GLP-1, right? Like I wanted to use it as a tool. It's not supposed to be in my mind like for the rest of your life. I want to allow you that confidence and help you feel amazing and get you into that lifestyle that's going to be sustainable and long term and almost prove to you that it's possible. Because patients just can't get there. That is such a mental block. I mean, the amount of diets that most of my clients have tried, 50 plus things, and like the starvation that they go through because this diet hasn't worked for me anymore. So I've just decided to fast for 3 weeks. I'm like, what the? okay, we need to like rein this in a little bit. But yeah, it's there's definitely not a one size fits all, but I do think that utilizing it as a tool in some way has been revolutionary for so many people. And I find it discouraging when there's so many naysayers out there about it who've watched a TikTok on something or an Instagram on something and heard somebody else's like awful story or whatever the case is. And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's companies out there who want to make money off of you. They're not monitoring your body composition. They're not looking at your muscle and your body fat every 4 weeks. They're not making sure you're eating protein. They're not checking on your hydration. They're not checking on anything. They're not running your labs. And as soon as you need a refill, they're going to give it to you. They don't really care. You don't know where the drug's coming from. You know, was it batch tested? What's in it? How potent is it? All of those things. And so, yeah, you're going to get people with awful stories
Yeah, I
because
had a
of that.
girlfriend actually, when I told her what I was going to do, she was like, "I'm really worried about you. I've heard really bad things about organs shut down." And I was like, I think she would have told me that if that was a risk. And there weren't risks that sounded scary, or I mean, I feel like you educated me on what I could experience. I would say out of all the things that we talked about, I experienced a little bit lack of regularity, and then was able to combat that quite easily. So, I'm pretty regular, and it was like, "Oh, this is different. I'm not using the bathroom like I would typically expect," but it was very manageable. I wasn't having a problem, and I addressed it immediately, and you told me what I could do to help. So, I didn't experience any organ shutdown, um, or, I don't have any long-term damage, and it was like you said, it was just, something to kinda help me bridge the gap between, until I could get the weight off, and now I'm done. So I hope I don't have to use it again. I'd like to be able to just maintain this weight, but I guess we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
And there's so many other things too, right? There's so many other things outside of just that one peptide that are super beneficial for patients. There's supplements. There's a lot more than just that hopefully providers are educating their clients about. That it doesn't have to just be like, well, I gained this back, I have to go back on these injections. But that's where that lifestyle is like super important. Most of my patients who start gaining weight, we do that whole check of like, what are you doing for walking and lifting and all those things. And they're usually like, yeah, okay, yeah, I haven't been doing so good. And it's like, because they come in and they're like, I want to go up on my dose or I want to go back on. And I'm like, before we actually go back on, let's look at your body composition and see what it looks like. And that might be really telling, and it usually is really telling. And then let's go through like your nutrition and all those things. And usually it's lifestyle. And most of the times I say no. Most of the times they say, we're not going up on this because there's so much potential in your actual lifestyle right now that's way cheaper than going up on this drug. And yeah, it's a safe, it's a safe peptide, and there's definitely precautions that you need to take, and not everybody's a candidate and things like that. But for the most part, yeah, I mean, as long as you're monitored and things like that, it's helpful. I would just prefer we set your lifestyle straight before we have to utilize peptides. They can be revolutionary, they can change people's lives, but there's always something that we could be doing better ourselves. And they're expensive, and I don't want everyone to feel like they have to just buy these every single month just to maintain that.
Right. And like you talked about your in-body machine, when I wanted to lose weight, all I had to go by was the scale, and, that's just a measure of gravity against me, and it didn't tell me even now, like, if it goes up a little, it messes with my head. But since you allow your clients to use the in-body measurements, it really fine-tunes exactly where the weight's coming from, and it was I was happily surprised that as my weight, dropped, but then started to go back up, it was showing because I'm building muscle, and, that's the weight gain I'm getting now is I'm getting more fit, and then I'm not getting more fat. So, if all you used was a scale to measure, it could make you think, oh, I need to do these other things when actually you're getting healthier if you have those other parts of your life fixed.
Yeah. I still have patients who will use their home scale and they'll get super discouraged, and then I'll say, "Well, come in and do an in-body because it's been a bit." And they'll be like, "Oh, thank God. I've been gaining muscle." I'm like, "Yeah, your body composition is changing. Like the scale might be going up, but look at your body composition. You have to notice like your shirts are fitting differently, your pants are fitting differently." But instead of just relying on those things, like you can see the numbers, and sometimes it's just a pound or two, sometimes it's just a percentage or two. But that makes a big difference. And over time, that's huge and super empowering. Um, because yeah, I think if you're not watching your body composition, that can be a pretty scary place to be, especially if you're trying to do any sort of like weight loss or really evaluating whether the medications are helping you or not too. Even just hormones, right? Hormones aren't really a weight loss aid. We don't think of them as like, oh, I started testosterone, I just melted all this weight off me. Um, but over the course of time, when your body and your mind start to understand, like, oh, I'm not in a deficiency anymore, it starts to get to a point where you're like, oh, I'm starting to lose weight. I'm not really like trying necessarily, but my composition is starting to change just with hormones alone. You can't not build and maintain muscle with testosterone on board. Um, it's just, you're just going to. And it's really, the more muscle you have, the less fat you have, the more lean you'll be, the more insulin, sensitive you'll become. The less blood sugar spikes you'll have, the better your gut health will be. Like it's just this spiral. So yeah, I think monitoring your body composition, specifically your muscle mass, is extreme. It's the number one.
Yeah, it's exciting to see it go in the right direction.
Yeah, always can give yourself a pat on the back, like, oh, I had that piece of dessert and it didn't break the bank.
Right.
Yeah,
No more than one salad's going to help you lose weight.
yeah,
You can still, it's not cheating. You can still live your life
yeah,
a little, and then it's not wrecking your lifestyle.
exactly. You can still indulge. Yeah, definitely. Um, if someone was feeling the way you used to feel, what would you tell them right now?
I would say we're all different, so I wouldn't just say, this is how you fix that. I would say research and, go talk to Betsey. Your first consultation is free, so there you have nothing to lose by having a conversation, um, whether it's with you or with another doctor in your office. But just look for answers with health providers that are educated in peptides and they're educated in hormone replacement therapy and find out because, their history wouldn't be like mine. So they might get a different recommendation, but at least they can find out the questions they have as it's related to their life, whether it's hot flashes or, lack of libido or whatever the issues are. It feels inevitable as you lose your hormones that you're going to experience something negative as a result of that. And to not feel, like that's your sentence, that's the rest of your life. You're just gonna have to feel this way, because to feel this good now makes me want to I didn't accept the offer to do the podcast because I like to be on camera or I wanna be the center of attention. Actually, like you're a provider that wants to help people. I'm a teacher. It's, I think we're put here to help one another. And I would like people who are suffering with the malaise and all the things that you go through when you're going through menopause to look for answers and find out what's out there because modern science is, again, it's new. There are new discoveries, new research, and it helped me in such a positive way. I almost want to shout it from the rooftops that when someone says, "Wow, you look great," I'm like, "Well, let me tell you. Let me explain why I feel this good." I'm not shy about it, when maybe I should be a little more reserved and be more private about my health. But if it could help someone else who's suffering, I certainly can't explain it like you do, but I can lead them in, to you or another doctor in your office where they can ask the right questions and get the answers they need. So, yeah, I'm excited to feel good. It's no different than if I had a good book to recommend, a good movie I've seen. I'm all about, like, "You gotta try this new skincare line." I'm just that person. I wanna share, and I'm all about relationships, so, that's why I agreed to do this. There's gotta be other women out there who don't know, like I didn't know, so educating yourself is the first step.
I love that. Is there anything else that you'd love to ask me or that you want to touch on?
I think we hit all the points. I can't think of anything else.
Yeah, I think we definitely took quite a few out there, so that's awesome. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story. I think that it's going to help a lot of women hopefully reach out to their own providers and have these hard conversations and maybe do some research of their own. Um, like you said, I'm happy to sit down with anybody and go through their labs or their questions. So if there's anybody out there, that's what I'm passionate about. I love what I do. I love changing lives. I will always want to continue to learn more and more and more about this type of medicine and preventative care because I think it's super impactful to everybody. And yeah, I just thank you for sharing just your story. I love it.